Chris March, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Ryan. Pleasure to be
Yeah.
here. I'm out here in the future in Australia, so it's actually Saturday morning here. The future's
Wow.
great. Let me tell you.
I don't think I knew that you were in Australia for this conversation. So thank you for being up early on Saturday then.
Yeah, you're most welcome. I just recently moved back to Australia after spending the last 16 years in Canada, so it's a change for me as well. I'm adjusting to.
Who is Chris March and what is his mission?
Great question. Chris March is someone who is ultimately curious in life. I grew up wanting to be a professional basketball player, had hoop dreams, didn't quite make it, or would be having a different conversation. And I really took the discipline and mindset into my career. I've worked in real estate, I've worked in the travel industry, and that really morphed into what I'm truly passionate about is leadership and helping others to be the best version of themselves. So my mission really is to help mid-career professionals. In a lot of ways, I'm talking to myself, and I went through that mid-career transition. So my mission in short is to help those mid-career professionals move into a more senior role and to elevate themselves into either a senior role or a C-suite or a director type role, because it can be tough really navigating that middle part. Let's call it ugly in a lot of ways, or also a lot of challenging ways. So that's my mission in short. I just truly love helping people to untap, because at the end of the day, we're not realizing our full potential in a lot of different ways, and we need people, we need guides to help us get us there.
Yeah, beautiful. And that's really resonant with me. But Chris, you describe yourself as a person who's practical, kind, and collaborative. Now, those aren't the first words that come to mind when you think of leadership in a high-performing environment. So where does this philosophy come from for you?
I think a lot of it comes from one of my greatest role models growing up was my grandmother. And she was exactly that. She was practical, she was kind, she was she was good with collaboration. I think naturally, as you're growing up and you have different role models or different people you're aspiring to, my grandmother was ultimately one of those. I just saw the way she interacted with people, and she was someone that I inspired to be, and I've really resonated with that. And then as I've moved into the corporate space and have been able to work into different leadership roles, my philosophy is really treat others as you want to be treated yourself. Be the leader. I know this is kind of cliche in a lot of ways and you hear it, but it is so true and often not thought about, is that be the leader you'd want to follow yourself. And that's the way I really try to serve others and help others in their own journey. And I think that's really what's powerful about leadership, is that you have this privilege to help others get better.
Beautifully said. What inspires you, Chris?
To get better. I think we live in a rich time. The amount of change that we're going through, the amount of information that is presented to us on a daily basis, the amount of decisions that we have to make, just from when you wake up in the morning to the end of your day, you factor in family, taking care of yourself first, and then if you're leading others, there's hundreds, thousands of decisions that you need to make. So there's a lot happening in the world right now is the way I look at it. So really, firstly, making sure that you're effectively leading yourself and then leading others. And you don't need to have a title to be a leader. You can lead your partner, your kids, your community, friends. Leadership is everywhere.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. What is one of Chris's values that you're living out through your work right now?
Great question. Values. When I think about leadership, I think about people element, and values is about people first. And I think everything is centered around humanity and people. And I think a lot of when you get to the core challenges of leadership and the people that I work with, a lot of it is people focused. And if we came from a lens of what can we do to support people better, that belief and that value system, we would have better structure, better communities, better results overall.
There's a theory that I have, and I don't know if I've just co-opted this or something, and I've shared it on several episodes of the podcast. I wonder what you think about this, Chris. I hear really this idea of, when I hear leadership, I hear you talking about lifting people up. There's sort of a, let's help each other out. And I have this sort of epiphany in my sort of personal development and coaching journey that when you're fully resourced, so to the point where, you've got food to eat, you're making some money, you've got, you feel safe. The instinct that I discovered there is that we want to help each other. I will talk with with people, whether they're sort of coaching clients or people on this podcast who have sort of grown that into a career or a legacy, right? They have got to this point where they're like, that's really what it's about is helping people out. What are your thoughts on that? Where does we diverge, or maybe where are we aligned?
I agree. I recently read a book called Unreasonable Hospitality. Have you heard of it?
I just read that book this year. Great book. Sorry.
Outstanding book. And I think what you just shared summarizes it perfectly. Leadership is hospitality. What does that mean? Leadership is about being of service to others. When you go to a restaurant, Ryan, I'm sure you've probably been in the last month, couple of months, or at least this year, as I say. What do you remember from that experience? Is it the food, the ambiance, the service? What factors do you resonate from that experience?
Well, I'm cheating here a little bit because I come from the restaurant world, but you remember the service, you remember the personal interactions, right? I mean, that's really what it is. It's like, what did I have? I don't know, but the server was really nice.
Exactly. And I think leadership is that exact way. If you think about it, and I've spoken about this before, I think I've shared a couple of posts about this, that is a leader. The server is a leader. You are at a restaurant, you are there tending to different people, you're providing the ambiance, you're making sure everyone's having a great experience. That's leadership. Leadership is hospitality.
As I was coming up in my professional career, I struggled to understand what leadership was, right? I thought it was standing on the hill in front of the army saying, charge, and listen, not that, I think there's a place in there, but leadership for me was understanding what it took to get there. Like what everything that happened, all the relationships you had with the people behind you so that they trusted you to charge. So I wonder how would you define leadership?
There's so many different leadership styles. When I hear you say that authoritative style, people think about leadership, right? They think that is someone, a dictator in a lot of ways, or a general, someone who does that. I think leadership is about, the simple thing is helping people to get better. I look at it. Leadership is about evoking change. There's leadership in management. Leadership is about supporting change. Management is the day-to-day operations and the tasks. Leadership is the people side of things. Great leaders evoke people to follow them. If you look at the best leaders, naturally, right, we're inclined to follow people. That's leadership. So it's by your actions. It's not by your words, because words are empty at the end of the day. We can say all the things, but if your actions don't align with your words, people aren't going to trust you. And I think it naturally falls behind being human and making sure that we can move people from point A to point B with a vision, communication, and a strategy that sits behind it.
You've set an audacious goal, and that is to inspire and equip 1 million people to embrace leadership roles by 2030. And this strikes me because you hear things like this generation kind of coming up, whatever you want to refer to that generation as, they're not interested in they're just kind of hopeless. They don't want to take on any more responsibility because they grew up seeing their parents work 2 and 3 jobs and still not be able to make ends meet. This was an inspiring message. You said in relation to this that the world doesn't have a shortage of talent. It's a shortage of effective leadership. So what does achieving this end look like?
I think humanity wins, right? We need better leaders in the world to help inspire change, to help navigate the next 5 to 10 years. I'm sure this will resonate with you, Ryan, and also your audience, is that the next 5 years to 10 years will probably be the most disruptive we've ever seen. We have AI, which has come into play. We have a lot of uncertainty around job security now with AI coming in. All this talk around we're going to lose these jobs and things are going to change. So I think the skills that we've got you here will not get you there anymore, right? I think Marshall Goldsmith said that, which is a great quote. And you're going to have to unlearn everything the playbook has taught you up until this point. So regardless if you're a new leader, someone who's been 5, 10, 15 years, you're going to have that growth mindset moving forward to help ensure that we inspire and we have a better place through leadership.
There's something interesting that I'm picking up on in your message here. And that is that, and this is different. I think back to when I first was in leadership positions, and I was really, it's funny, if you look at a bookstore, there's literally 1,000 books on leadership. It's like,
oh yeah,
there's confusion about what it is. And there's sort of an ease and a sense of that leadership is something that's accessible to everyone, and that everyone should consider sort of uh, how they can become a leader, how they can be a leader. But I think the accessibility part is really what shows up that's different from other conversations I've had with people about leadership. Where does that come from, Chris?
It comes from being firstly passionate about leadership. It's something that I've been obsessed with for a long period of time. From the sports world, growing up, Kobe Bryant was an idol of mine, still is. And we could dive into Kobe and his mindset. The Mamba mentality is something that I still work towards. It's about those 1% getting better, striving to be better than you were yesterday. To your point, leadership has been overcomplicated in a lot of ways. I really think it's been overcomplicated with all these different leadership styles.
Yeah.
When we just need to focus on people. Leadership is about leading. That's it. We have overcomplicated it. Keep it simple. Simplicity always will win. And I think that's what we need to get back to. In a world of complexity, keep it simple.
Absolutely. You mentioned your grandmother, which is also, that's another thing that resonates with me. I was the first of, I think, like 23 grandchildren. And right or wrong, I would walk into a room, and my grandma would be like, "Oh, there's my favorite grandson." And that's why I had 5 little brothers, right? So
Yeah.
a lot of what she did, and that's a whole nother story, was really inspiring to me. But in Chris's world, who had this tremendous impact on you as a leader, and how do they influence you in your approach now?
I have to say my grandmother, similar to what you experienced, Ryan, she was just so selfless. I was the first grandson as well, and I was treated like a king. I was given everything that I wanted, and I just saw her a woman who was so devoted to her family and put herself before everyone else, put her family and everything. And it was just, that for me has always really resonated with me. And I think leadership is metaphorically the same way. It's about helping others to become better. And I really think that's what it's been about for me. And that's always translated. And I've been fortunate to have good leaders as I've moved through my own career, my professional experiences. And I've taken little bits of what they've done really, really well and molded it into my own. Because at the end of the day, you can't try and imitate someone else. We live in a world where there's a very copycat society. We have so many different influences and role models. But at the end of the day, there's only one Ryan Watts. There's only one Chris March. So lean into your unique value proposition and blend it with different people that you're fortunate to cross paths with, or someone you aspire that you may have never met, like Kobe Bryant for me.
Yeah, there's something that struck me about hearing you say that. It's sort of a message I've heard before, but it's almost like what's suggested by culture is, you need to be more like this person or more like this. And really what the paradox is the world needs more Chris March. The world needs more of the individual, their unique contributions.
100%. And I think that's one of the things, I'm sure you may have experienced this in your own career, Ryan, is that we put a veil on sometimes when it comes to work. Monday to Friday, we try to be someone else. And then once the weekend hits, we're like, all right, it's time to be Chris March now. When the biggest gains are made, when you can be vulnerable, be yourself, be open, and not trying to put on an act during work. And I think people can see that in a lot of different ways. And you can get into that act of trying to be someone else that you're not. But the best success that you will have as a leader and as an individual contributor in any organization or any work is to truly be yourself and serve yourself first. And you don't need to be a leader to be that. It's just about alignment with yourself.
And so in your journey, Chris, how did that seems tricky. It's hard to, I know that is something that personally I had a difficult time. I kind of was just, okay, well, here's the checklist of things you do in life. You go to school, you get this degree, you drive this car, you get married, you get promoted. And I was standing there, in like my mid to late 30s, like, wait, what? This is supposed to be, this is terrible. How would you guide somebody to discover what authenticity means for them?
Authentic. The first part of that is authenticity is being real, being 100% true to themselves. So it's making sure that you're checking in with yourself first. And this is a big part of coaching, right? You can ask those type of questions to check in with yourself. We also have the ability now with such great AI tools. We use ChatGPT because it's one of the most familiar out there. You have the ability to check in with yourself through AI. I use it for some of my journaling, some of my prompting. The more information you feed into it, the better you can work with it, right? And it's a great sounding board. If you don't have the ability to work with a coach, you can use an AI coach. You have the ability to do voice recognition or to journal to clear your thoughts. So to be aligned with your most authentic self, ask those questions of yourself and ask those of those around you are you being truly authentic with the alignment? And if that's not possible and you're looking from a professional lens, who are those trusted colleagues that can give you feedback? And I think if you're open to feedback, you can get to the right place, because I really think feedback is a roadmap, not a roadblock, if you're open to it and you're asking the right questions of yourself and others to get to the place and the outcome that you want to get to.
It's interesting. I think I just recorded a podcast yesterday and I sort of realized we were talking about AI a little bit. And I said, one of the things that I think is a benefit of AI is it really spotlights the importance of authenticity.
Yes.
I think I had this sort of crisis where I also am a musician, and there's a Suno, which is a music AI, and I typed in like this prompt about all my favorite types of music, and I was kind of being funny with it. I put in there like some sci-fi novel stuff, and it spit out, Chris, like a song that was like my favorite song that I listened to for like a month, and I was like, wait a second, this isn't a human that wrote this. And I struggled with that. I was like, well, what does that mean?
Right.
And I eventually realized that, a lot of what AI does is reflect ourselves back, right? And so it was reflecting in the best way that it could all the things that I loved back to me. And it's like, why am I so surprised at that? So I'm hearing you say something maybe just a little bit different, is that, well, actually, no, maybe it's not different. You're sort of saying that you can use it as a mirror to check in with yourself.
100%. I use it. I've been testing as a coach. I've been testing different tools and being curious around how can I incorporate AI into my daily life, into my daily practice. I'm working with an organization right now at the Entourage, where I'm advising 7, 8, 9-figure founders. And we're a very AI-driven organization. So I'm always constantly thinking about what can we do to speed up things for myself and also for organizations. So what can we do to implement AI as a business strategy? And the biggest piece that I've seen from a coaching perspective is the reflection back. And you can have the ability to journal in there. I've created my own what I call perfect or an elite prompt that I set up every single morning. It asks me 7 questions. It takes about 3 to 5 minutes. And in the evening, I check in with myself, and it helps me work towards ultimately what my goals are. And it's great. It really is. And it gives great feedback. It's complimentary. It's supportive. What a tool. What a fantastic tool.
Yeah. I wonder, without telling us what the prompts are, because I don't want to put the focus there, what does that do for you as far as a mirror? What is it? How does it set you up for success?
So I've inputted what are my goals long term, and what is my mindset that I want to work towards. And it really just sets up a couple of different questions around, firstly, setting a future state of where I want to be. So what's the mindset, and the questions each single day, every single day, what is going to help me get from point A to point B? And at the end of each day, it prompts me to ask for different wins. Did I achieve what I set out to be my priorities? What did I learn today? What can I implement tomorrow? So it really just helps me really get out my thoughts. Firstly, at the start of the day, I think for me, it builds momentum. I'm an early morning person. I go to the gym, and then on the train, I'll journal. And then in the evening, when I'm coming back from work, I will reply to it as well. And I think it really puts me in a reflective, forward-thinking, forward-planning state.
I want to talk about your journey to coaching, if that's all right. And I just wonder if you could just share with us what sort of led you there. You started to at the beginning, so you gave us some context, but how did you get to, Chris March Coaching?
So I worked in the travel industry for 17 and a half years and was a senior leader for a large corporate organization, travel organization, in 2020. And as we may recall, or maybe we've forgotten those years, 2020 to 2022 were extremely tough years. And for tourism and hospitality, the industry was decimated. So during that time, we had to lay off 90% of our staff, which one day I may write a book about that. And as the pandemic continued to fester, we thought it was going to be couple of months, no revenue was coming in. And there was thoughts around our organization that we may have to shut it down. So at that point, I was living in a condo in Toronto by myself, had a lot of time referring, and I wanted to ask myself, if I was going to move into a career, what would that career look like? So I asked all people that I trusted, good colleagues, family, friends, what do I do well? What don't I do well? What can you see me doing next? And everything pointed to helping professional. It was either I was thinking about jumping into psychology, it was going to be counseling, psychotherapy, and then just the pathway made sense at the time to jump into coaching. That's where it really began. In 2022, at the start of 2022.
For all of the sort of tragedy and the difficulties that came along with COVID or whatnot, and it sounds like perhaps I caused me to pause. And, like you, I think in my 20s, I went to school and I had a psychology degree, but I didn't continue to go on because somebody told me you can't really make any money doing that. And when you're when you hear that and you're in your young 20s, you're like, okay, I need to do business then. So I sort of switched over to that, but it never went away. And I thought, like you did, I was like, maybe I'll go. I even called, I'm in Cincinnati, so not too far from Toronto, actually. And I called the University of Cincinnati and was like, hey, I have a full-time job. I want to maybe go back for psychology. And they built a whole program. And then I was like, yeah, no, I don't want to do that. And then I sort of discovered coaching and whatnot. I kind of stumbled into it and realized the impact that it had. So there's some overlap there. So I'm not sure how I brought me into that, but back to you. You're an ICF-certified coach and a master practitioner of NLP. Where does this fall into the timeline here?
For me, it comes back to that appetite to always continue to learn. And I think as a coach yourself and also as a leader, you have to be consistently upgrading your operating system. And fortunate at that time, as I'm coaching, and one of the requirements of becoming an ICF coach or International Coaching Federation, for people who are not familiar with that acronym, it's the gold standard for coaching. And there's a lot of requirements to become a coach with the ICF. And as part of that, there's professional development that you need to uphold to retain that standard. And the NLP was just something that I'd always been curious about. And I feel, again, as a leader at that point, that communication is the most important skill, period, I would say, as a leader. And also NLP is about business and in life. If you can be a better communicator in your relationships and in business, it's only going to help you. So I looked at it from that lens, and I'm super glad that I did it, because it's a skill that you can continually evolve, and something that I'll go back to as well, because communication is just such an important skill. So if anyone's really at the start of their career or in the middle of the career and thinking about where should I focus on next, communication.
It's interesting. There's no way I could prove this, but I was, as I'm working in a program right now to further my ICF credentials. And I was like, okay, I was kind of thinking what's next. And I was interested in NLP. And so for those of us who don't know, what is, you sort of talked about it. It's about communication, right? But what is that NLP certification, that master certification all about?
So neuro-linguistic program, neuro is the mind, linguistics the communication part. So it's using tools to help evoke change. It's a subset of psychology in a lot of different ways. I know there's mixed reviews around neuro-linguistic programming. So it's really about foundationally helping. It's a helping modality. It's very similar to coaching. So there's different tools that I've learned through NLP, that's through visualizing or certain different exercises that I may pull out depending on the person and the challenges that they're facing. There's also different journaling exercises that you can do throughout it. However, in its main subset, it's about psychology and understanding the neuro-linguistic programming of the mind and how you can help people overcome either trauma in a lot of different ways, or you can help evoke change. And change, as we know, is a key part of leadership And also as human beings, as we're wired, naturally we're not inclined to enjoy change.
So with these, the ICF certifications and the NLP, the master practitioner of NLP, how do you blend mindset, language, and leadership in your coaching?
It really depends on the person. You're serving the person that comes to you, as I'm sure you're familiar with, Ryan. And when I look about success, and we can talk about success a little bit, if you ask 10 people what success means to them, you're going to get 10 different answers. So when I work with individuals or organizations, the scope of the work is going to be unique and personalized to their situation and their success metrics. So with some people that I work with, it could be a subset of mindset versus leadership, or it could just be mindset that we're going to be purely working on, but they overlap in a lot of different ways because a lot of the challenges that we face come from ourselves. And also with the leaders that I'm working with now at the Entourage, is that you're only going to be worth the amount of money that you think you're worth, or the role that you all think you're worth, right? So there's certain work that you need to do personally, and that's where I can come in, or great coaches like yourself that can help shift that mindset. And it's something that I've had challenges with as well. And when I first came up as a coach, you only charge what you truly think you're worth, but you should be charging the worth of the problem that you're solving. And my rates have gone substantially higher from what I was offering at the start to the problems that I'm solving now.
So, it's funny, just to give you some background, this podcast literally grew out of what you're just talking about here. I was like, what the heck does success mean to me? Like, I thought it was checking, so I've got my life cheat sheet with everything checked off. And I'm like, what the hell? How come I feel worse now, and it is funny to laugh about that, but I'm like, what is it? So I just thought, well, I'll just talk to people about what they think it is. And it's sort of, it got a life of its own now, but you've created a success coaching framework. Talk about the success coaching framework.
So it was on the back of what I just really shared, is every single person has a different perspective on success. So I have a framework which is built on the back of that, which is created around a roadmap of a different amount of tools that we'll work on throughout the program that we've been enabled to do. We'll first look at establish some goals, understanding how that relates to them, the person typically, if I'm working one-on-one with, and also the organization overall. And then we'll look at some commitments, some success metrics of how we can measure that we're doing well. And then how do we sustain those metrics and ensure that what we're embedding is not just something that we're talking about. It's going to be sustained from after we complete the work that we do together. So that's the way that I really look at it from a high level. It's about building, understanding, setting alignment with the person and the organization, if it's part of a corporate program, and then making sure it's unique to the individual, and then making sure that we can have the sustained and scalable success after we continue to work.
So the success coaching framework is really, it's a framework that can be used to highlight anybody's uniqueness, if you will, right? Whether it be a company or a person or whatnot. And I guess, was there a moment or experience that sparked the creation of this framework?
Very similar to what you shared with success as well, right? I kept on hearing different people talk about what success meant to them. And as I had more and more different conversations, I just resonated with understanding that when you work with people, it's about being unique in the way that you support them and making sure that you have the alignments and you give them the tools that sets them up for success. So the framework is similar to other frameworks that I've seen in coaching. You may have heard the grow model. There's a lot of great models out there. So I took what I've learned through my own coaching practice, through my own corporate leadership, and what I believe people need to be equipped to be set up for success based on their own version.
Yeah, and it seems like I like your focus on sustainability, because this is actually, I've had several coaching conversations today with clients. One of the things that's came up in those is that is the sustainability of structures, right? It's like, well, I guess I'll try this structure again. And it's like, okay, I mean, perhaps there's something to that, but what adjustment would make it more sustainable? It seems like that is sort of inherent in this framework.
Correct, right? Because a great coach, to your point, Ryan, is someone who is going to be impactful. You do all this work for 3, 6, 9 months or I've worked with clients for over a year, coming up to 2 years as well, is the work happens when you're not in the room, right? The insights, the growth, everything you talk about is discussed in a forum similar to this or in person. And then the real work happens outside of the conversation. So the sustain element means that everything that you've discussed is going to be embedded and is going to be sustainable. And I think a lot of the challenges people have with overcoming that is because we're impatient. We expect things to change so quickly, and there's no magic pill with coaching, as you know as well. You've got to be kind to yourself and allow things to take form and get to know oneself before you start embedding all these changes and these habits, because it does take time. And that's where the sustain part comes in, is making sure this is just not a one-time, 3-month time thing. 2-3 years from now, if I check in with a client, it's sustained.
Yeah. Yeah. It is kind of it's interesting because now this podcast like came in between a whole bunch of coaching conversations I've had, and then a conversation with my coach yesterday where the question that came up, it's kind of funny that a coach would have this question, but I think most coaches know they can't believe the things they're saying to their coach, probably. That's my experience. And I've heard that, but I said, well, yeah, but I want to, we were sort of talking about how, there's this pull from being centered to sort of being in chaos, right? And I was like, well, I don't want to have that pull anymore. What is that pull, And it's this question of sustainability, right? It's like, well, you can't expect. So now you see the problem and you're working towards it, and it's frustrating and difficult. But that's what this space is for. It's how do we make this sustainable for you? And it's different for me than it is for Chris and it is for anybody else.
100%, right? And I think that space that you give yourself is so valuable, and that's why coaching is such a important tool to support people to identify blind spots and just to hear the things that you say out loud. Sometimes it's amazing. I'm sure you see these insights, that self-accountability when you hear it out loud and you have the ability to reflect back. You're saying this, is this alignment with where you need to go, right? And I think that's the true power in coaching, where you're enabled to lift a mirror, coming back to the mirror part, to enable people to see what they're telling themselves is not truly in alignment with where they want to be.
So what's a common myth about coaching or NLP or in your related field? What's a common myth that you've ran into?
Be a coach.
Yeah.
I think that the barrier entry for coaching is seen as low. And I think a lot of coaches, when they think coaches, they think authoritative, or from a North American perspective, you think coaches, right? You think someone on the sports, on the sideline. So I think that is a big myth, that the coaching is just an authoritative person. I think it's also one of the myths that I've constantly hear is that coaching is only accessible for celebrities and athletes and the wealthy. No, it's not. There's a lot of coaches out there. There's a lot of great coaches out there. It's about finding alignment with what you need specific help with. It could be health, could be mindset, could be leadership, could be wealth. There's a lot of different coaches out there and a lot of good ones. So anytime you invest in coaching, make sure you do your homework. But if you do and you find a coach that you can literally gel with and feel comfortable with to open up and share, it can be truly a game changer for your life.
I've heard that too. I think I was confused about what coaching was. I thought it was like, okay, what do you think about this? You're just bouncing ideas off of. And especially in sort of the ICF model, it's like not that at all. The best coaching sessions are when the coach says very little. And the coachee is sort of having this revelations, it is sort of about the space where they can hear themselves talk to a degree. And I've had people who've came to me and been like, okay, yeah, I need help with this resume and I need to get a promotion and we need to get another job here, and I still remember my first conversation with my coach. It was like, I need to be more productive. And he's like, oh, okay, great. Well, what's that going to do for you? And I was like, what do you mean? I'm going to get more done. And he's like, okay. And if you get more done, then what? And I remember being like, man, this is not going to work. Well, that was 5 years ago and we're still working together, because it got down to what was actually happening. And so I think that idea that there is ICF training is, I don't know about your training. It was serious. It is one of the hardest things I continue to do. It just is a lot of, I don't know how to describe it. Maybe you can.
The ICF it is labeled and is marketed as the gold standard for coaching. And I think they proudly stand behind the requirements that go into it to give the listeners an understanding of what's required. I think it's 120 hours of professional development. And then there's three different levels of coaching barriers. There's the ACC, the PCC, the MCC. And for the first barrier, you need 120 hours of coach, 120 hours of professional development, 200 hours of professional coaching. And then you have to sit an exam, which you probably remember. I'm happy to tell I failed it two times. It was one of the hardest exams that I've ever done.
Yeah,
I missed it
not
by
easy.
1 mark the first time, and I think 3 marks the second time as well. It wasn't easy. It's what's the best answer and what is the worst answer when it comes to different coaching scenarios as well. So know if you're looking for a coach, and if they're an ICF coach, you're getting a good one.
Yeah, absolutely. So we talked about success a little bit, but I'm sure you've ran into, in your own experience that you shared kind of begs this question. Many leaders sort of achieve success, right? I'm doing the quotes thing with my fingers here. But on paper, they might look successful, but they feel unfulfilled. How do you help clients sort of redefine success or, try to adjust the sustainability of their structure in order to, to help them reach what they define as success?
Firstly, the important piece of that is the clarity of truly understanding what that success means. In my own experience, we can define a set of success metrics of when we first start working together with coaching clients and what that success piece means. What you can find through exploratory and coaching weekly, bi-weekly is sometimes that changes through conversations. And it's through that exploratory asking those right questions, you're going to understand as you continue to drive forward, what is that true fulfillment looks like. And I think that takes a bit of time because, again, when you first start, people are going to tell you one thing and then that will change. And I think it can also change throughout time. If I look at success now as someone in my 40s versus my 30s, that's completely different. And that's okay because you change and success for you then changes. So I think it firstly starts with self, and your role as a coach is to help guide that person to get to that destination.
Yeah, absolutely. A beautiful answer. I want to talk a little bit more, because now we've talked about coaching, and I think the audience, if they're following along here, they can sort of see how that connects to leadership and leadership in actions. When you're working with a team, for example.
Yes.
How do you encourage creative thinking and innovation?
Firstly, it starts with psychology safety. Asking around those questions, you've got to look at the leader, right? What is the forum that you're creating to evoke innovation and conversations? Do people feel safe to bring up the ability to make mistakes? Does the leader give the opportunity for people to be heard and encourage those conversations? In a lot of ways, the leader sets the tone, right? If you're being vulnerable and taking ownership of your mistakes and also of the results, that then sets the tone. And that's just the simplicity of leadership. As I mentioned earlier on, people are going to see you naturally what you do. And that's the pressure, the privilege of leadership is people are always watching you. So you as a leader set the tone. And I think it comes back to what exactly is that leader doing to evoke that. And then if that safety is fostered, people are naturally going to then create that innovation as well. So firstly, I always start with the leader and then build from there.
I think what you said about psychological safety, you sort of answered this question, but I just want to put like an exclamation point on it. When you walk into a company or whatnot, what does psychological safety look like?
It means having the ability to speak freely about business, your leader, the state of the business, their own future at the organization as well. It's being able to truly speak freely. And there's a lot of different reports out there that support that is not the conversations that we're having right now. People they're not engaged firstly. So how can you have the safety if you're not engaged? You're completely disengaged in the workplace. Firstly. So if you're not engaged, you're not going to feel safe to have those conversations, or you may not even feel that it's important. I think there are two things when you think about the workplace is that the engagement is so low globally, unfortunately, right now, and people just don't feel engaged to really care enough, sadly.
Yeah, I hear that. And I heard something that really started changing my thinking on this. And this was from an executive coach. And he said, listen, you don't fix the workplace culture or the company culture by focusing on the company culture. You do it by continuously communicating to them the meaningfulness of their work. And I was like, why doesn't everybody hire this guy? That's like genius. You know what I mean? Because I remember, we got to have, these engagement, activities and things like that. And they came from a good place, right? But really, people performed and were the most engaged when they realized how important what they were doing was.
It's extremely simple. And when I hear that, Ryan, I come back to we've overcomplicated leadership. It should be really, really simple. And when I hear what you shared from another executive coach reminds me of the book Start With Why. We all want to be belonging. We want to feel a part of something. We want to feel like we're coming to work and we're contributing. You as a leader, you need to communicate what it is your team or unit is doing to help the cause overall. And your responsibility is to rinse and repeat the mission that your team or unit is going on. And if you feel like you're repeating it and you're sick of saying it, keep saying it because you're getting your message across.
I thought this was interesting and it didn't make sense to me at first. You teach leaders how to fill the glass half full. So how can optimism coexist with realism in today's business world, given that analogy there?
It comes back to self. Positivity is something that has a ripple effect. And again, I think that comes from my leadership lens, is that a lot of the people that I work with, I see them struggling with many different things, maybe imposter syndrome, communication, or a direct report. It is then having the ability to be able to turn that around on its head and being able to function directly with the people on your team. And that comes from how you turn up and how you show up every single day as a leader. So it's important to get people into the right mindset and to turn up to become the best version of themselves every single day. Because when I take myself back as a leader myself, and I took great pride in that, every single day, as soon as I stepped into that door, no matter what was going on outside, I'd turn up and just deliver the best version of myself and just be positive to every single person that I touched and to be kind.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's powerful too. We don't realize how powerful it can be just to be kind. I think is really the thing there, just being a kind, good-hearted person. So you've worked with clients at really the top of their fields, right? Is there a story or a transformation that sort of stayed with you in this work?
That's a good question. There's been many. The one that I typically go back to is it resonates with the glass half full. Is I was working with the CEO who I met through my social circle, and very successful CEO, and we met at a friend's wedding, and he's like, I hear you're a coach. I hear you're pretty good. I'm at this point in my life now where I've been really successful. I don't know what my next pathway is, and I'm not sure if I can learn from you or take anything from you, but I'm interested. So long story short, we worked together for a better part of, I think it was 6 months. And in his testimonial, he said, I've gone from a half glass full type of guy to I'm going into a half glass type of guy through the work that we've done, because I've been able to identify that I'm not a person that knows it all. I'm a person that can help become better through working with my team. And Chris is someone who's enabled me to see that. And I think that's one of the best stories that I share, because it shows you that a lot of time as we become older and become more successful, we feel that we know it all. But there's so much we can learn from each other. And that story really resonated with me, because he went in there not being a fan at all. And never since then, he's referred multiple different clients to me through that.
Yeah.
It's really one of the great stories that I've been able to have over the last couple of years. And it's powerful to turn someone who's not sure into a raving fan. Feels really good.
Yeah, it definitely does. Thank you for sharing that. So when you think of working with these folks who are sort of high achievers, right? Is there a common thread or something that in the sort of obstacles they're facing or they're trying to circumvent?
I think there's a lot of self-doubt in leadership at multiple levels, because leadership can be lonely in a lot of different ways, right? And I think that's why people at the high level engage with coaches, to have that sounding board, to have that thought partner. And I think that's where the value really resonates with different people. And I think one of the biggest challenges that I see is the imposter syndrome, that people, no matter how far at the highest level, I've coached some super high level CEOs, and sometimes they even feel like they're going to be found out in a lot of different ways. So how do we keep that at bay? How do we work on that? And that starts with the inner work that you do. You can do that by yourself, or you can do that with a coach. And a lot of conflict resolution is always something that I'm working with. Either that can be internal or external with different suppliers or different team members as well. And lastly, a lot of people are grappling with AI and how to implement it right now, right? People don't know where to start. They don't know what to do. They've heard of ChatGPT. They're starting to figure that out. What do I do from a business strategy side of things? That's coming up a lot as well. Some people are ignoring it. Some people are waiting. So that's the thing about leadership. There's a lot of different complexities always around. So there's a lot of work for great coaches.
Yeah, you mentioned early on, I took note of that there's the next 5 years, maybe even a shorter time span than that, but at least the next 5 years between now and 2030, there's going to be a lot of disruption, a lot of really radical and sort of exponential change. I imagine, and this conversation is coming up more and more in the podcast and more with clients that I have. And so I'm noticing it showing up, a couple more times every week, over and over. So how are you guiding folks that you're working with through this period of uncertainty, of growing uncertainty?
None of us have a crystal ball, right? We don't have a crystal ball. It's making sure that we're being proactive instead of reactive. That's all we can do, right? Is making sure that we have a game plan. We're putting some safeguards in place to be prepared as possible. And depending on where people are at, it's making sure that we've got robust plans and structure in place to make sure that we're implementing the right strategies. And I think AI is a tool that amplifies people at the end of the day, and it's going to help embed for people and for businesses to be more productive. So what is the alignment, depending on the industry that I'm working with, that can help people get there?
There's definitely going to be, there's some growing pains I can see. It's like when I look out at social media right now, I'm like, okay, when did everybody start using hyphens and everything? It's like the one that shows up for me all the time. And listen,
Yeah.
I certainly, I'm not an early adopter, I wouldn't say, but I certainly use ChatGPT and AI tools to help me flesh out my ideas. But I really sort of take pains to make sure it's coming from, again, an authentic place. But I think right now, that's a lot of the things that I see is that people, if it's done anything, it's amplified the amount of just content that's out there. And it kind of, you can tell. And that's one of the growing pains that I see is that, okay, because I've kind of worked my way through that, I've posted something and I'm like, wow, that's not even spelled right, and that's the growing pain. And I think that there's going to be, as it gets better and there's going to be more sort of growing pains there. And like you said, nobody has a crystal ball, but I think for me, what I'm really seeing is that it's going to highlight the importance of authenticity for us all. Because what does Chris really think? Not what did ChatGPT spit out, even based on a conversational history, right? I think that authenticity is going to grow in importance.
I agree, and I have great examples of that, Ryan. To add to your point, is I share content on LinkedIn, and the content that is performing well or that resonates with audiences is the stuff that I'm talking about. I wrote a post maybe 3 or 4 months ago when I first moved back to Australia, talking about the reverse culture shock of moving back to Australia.
Yeah.
And it blew up. Just me talking about the challenges of I feel more Canadian than I do Australian, the reverse culture shock of navigating my way back from one side of the world to another side of the world. Things look different here. And that's something that, to your point, you can't Google that. And I think that's going to be the point of difference is people want to resonate with challenges, because with social media, to your point, we've created this highlight reel emphasis when life isn't like that. It's not just one big highlight reel. There's ebbs and flows, there's downs, and people really resonate with what's real.
Yeah, they do. That's going to be something that will show up to these growing pains, is that the most authentic thing. Because I mean, I'm not Canadian or Australian, and that's interesting to me, and it just made me think. I was like, well, hey, and I'll just ask you now, what prompted the move back to Australia for you?
I was extremely happy in Canada. I moved there when I was 27. And I lived there for 16 years. It really centered around family. as you get older, things change and importance change, and parents are getting older. I have 5 nieces that I barely met or spent quality time with, and it just felt like the right time. And we're keeping an open door to move back to Canada. I've still got property over there. I've got a huge network. As I said, I feel more Canadian. All of my network is over there, but my family is here. So I'm here for the short term, but in 2 or 3 years, I could be back in Canada. And long term, ideally, 6 months in Canada, 6 months in Australia would be the perfect scenario.
So what's next for you and Chris March Coaching?
Just to continually evolve and to speak on bigger stages. I love getting my message out there, and thank you, Ryan, for giving me this opportunity to be here and chatting with you today. And I really want to continue doing the work that I love doing and helping executives, leaders to navigate the complexities. I believe, as I said, with the next 5 years, there's going to be a lot of opportunity and a lot of support needed with change. The amount of change it's going to be going through is really going to be a lot. One of my focuses moving forward is to also become a change practitioner to help support that, to add more skills to my skill set. Next year, I'm going to be getting a certification with Prosky, which is a change management practitioner. So I'm working on that and continually just get better and become a better leader, better person, better partner, better uncle, better son, you name it.
Yeah, it's funny because this is my experience, but when I hear you say get better, I hear something mechanical until you start saying a better partner, a better uncle, a better son, and you're like, oh, wait a second. There's something very human at play here. So for the audience, what is it like working with Chris?
It's personalized. It's unique. My approach is really centered around you. I'm in your corner. One of the skills or the consistent feedback that I get is that I'm a great listener. I'm extremely patient. I'm kind. And ultimately, my goal is to help you win, whatever that win means and whatever that success metric means. And I'm truly passionate about what I do. And that comes across in my coaching. And if you work with me, you're not a client. You're someone that I'm going to be supporting with forever. I've got clients now. We've stopped working together, but I reach out and check in how they're doing. And if they want to jump on a call, let's do it. Whatever I can do to help them win. That's what you get when you work with me.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I looked up some feedback on what it's like to coach with you. And I just wanted to share a couple of things like with you, get your response to it and just share it with the audience. One says, we left feeling energized and motivated to continue developing our leadership skills and advancing our professional growth. Another person said, Chris allowed me to better understand what being a leader was all about. And now that I'm reading these, I took note of these before our conversation, but it makes sense. Like there's a question about leadership out there. I think that some people who are in leadership positions really have, and there's no judgment there. It's like, hey, what is it about you as an individual that leadership is, Another says, I've seen real growth as both a manager and a leader. And I love one of the things that struck me that you said is there's leadership and management. Also, you so often get a distinction. Are you a manager or are you a leader? And the way you presented is sort of without judgment. You're like, well, there's leadership and management, but being, what would it mean to have leadership supersede the management position is sort of the question, right?
Yeah.
And then, I recommend Chris if you were looking to level up. So when you hear this reflected back to you, I know I'm sort of putting you on the spot right now, but what resonates with you here?
Most of those are from, I believe, I facilitated a workshop a couple of months ago as part of returning to Australia. I had a strategic advisory role for a couple of months working with a sports rec organization, and I created a program for new leaders within the organization, and we did a one-day workshop, and it was new leaders in that space. And I absolutely love that, being in that space. And it's always energizing for me. If you put me in a room talking about leadership, that's my space. I love it.
So Chris, where can people connect with you online?
2 ways is probably the best way to get in contact with me. First is through my website, which is chrismarchcoaching.com, all one word. Alternatively, I post content, as I mentioned earlier, on LinkedIn. I post 2 to 3 times a week, just sharing insights from what I see in the landscape and also from my own personal experience. So feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. If you have any questions about leadership or you're considering coaching, and even if I can't help you, I will always point you in the right direction as well. So feel free to reach out to me there.
Yeah. So, as we come to the end of our time here, what didn't I ask you that I should have, or what should we have touched on that we didn't get an opportunity to?
Ryan, I commend you. You've clearly done a lot of homework on everything. I think you've probably done the most thorough research that I've seen. I've done a lot of podcasts, and you've asked questions that haven't been asked. You looked at my reviews, you looked at my website. So well done. I think the only other question, there's so many questions. It's hard to really pinpoint one exactly. It's hard to say. I think, what does success mean to me? But I think I've already mentioned that throughout the podcast as well. So I don't think there's anything else you could have asked.
Yeah, I just want to say, number one, I want to thank you for the compliment. I don't want to bypass that, but I mean, there's everything from the name of my company's called Ryan Watts Life Coaching. I'm like, wow, it just immediately, there's a little bit of similarity with the messaging and talking about success. And so it made it easy to do the research on that, because I'm like, wow, there's a lot of overlap here. And I think that's a good thing, because I think my sort of mission is to help people be able to have that space to define themselves. And I think the defining is, what is success? What am I doing with my time here? And I think, talking about success kind of gives an inroad to that, but that's really the question. And I see our missions sort of overlapping there. So this is all a really long way to say that, I really appreciate the work that you're doing. And I think, it's the most valuable work coming into this sort of next iteration of human life, right? To get, not too meta there, but I think given all the change and uncertainty that, is going to come at us, and much more quickly than it has historically, coaching is going to be more sort of valuable than ever. And I think that space, and I think it ends up being valuable for the coach and for the coachee too. So I don't know if you have that experience too, but there's certainly something that happens indirectly from being a coach.
I completely agree with you, Ryan. The duality, I look at it as duality, is that I'm learning through the coaching process as well. I'm in a unique advantage, and I'm sure you feel the same. I'm having conversations with 8-9-figure founders, right? And I'm hearing their challenges, which are not too dissimilar to people who are just starting their own leadership journey, right? And I'm learning, and I try and take on as much as I can through the process while coaching people effectively as well. And I think it's an absolute privilege to be a coach and to help people navigate the challenges that they're facing as well. And it's a huge learning experience, and I'll coach until the very end.
Yeah, I feel the same. So a lot to overlap there. Well, thank you for your wisdom and your openness to share your experience and your knowledge. And thank you for traveling back in time to us on Friday when you're in Saturday.
Well, thank you again, Ryan, for having me. It's been a great conversation, and thank you for all the amazing work that you do as well. And reporting from the future, things are looking pretty great.
Yeah, good. I love that. All right. Thanks again, Chris.
Thanks, Ryan.